Weight loss suits, fasting, and pills, oh my! Losing weight might just be the most convoluted topic in the world of fitness. There are so many myths, misunderstandings, and downright lies that plague people's understanding of weight loss to the point many have no understanding at all. This video is going to make some sense of it all. These are the 50 biggest weight loss myths. We're going to start this video with a big one. The first myth on this list is a calorie is a calorie. This phrase leads people to think that it doesn't matter where a calorie comes from, as all calories are equal. This is a very simplified explanation. It fails to acknowledge the other nutrients that come along with the calorie. Is a calorie from beer the same as a calorie from salmon? Does it provide vitamins and minerals or just a crazy insulin spike? Will it keep you full, or will you be hungry again minutes after you eat? Where you get your calories matters, so pay attention. For example, you can get calories from protein. Myth number 2 is more like part 2 to number 1, but it's going to talk about something really cool that happens with protein. When we eat food, our body uses energy to digest it, absorb it, transport its nutrients, and dispose of it. This is known as the thermal effect of food, or TEF. Out of protein, fat, and carbs, protein has the highest TEF of 20 to 30%. That means if you ate 100 calories, you'd use just 20 to 30 processing it. So yes, not all calories are equal. Speaking of protein, here's another myth. Myth number 3. You can't get fat from protein. We're not even sure where this idea came from, but it's more common than you might think. The idea that protein can't be stored as fat. Well, it's true that protein itself can't be stored as fat. Your body is incredibly efficient. Any excess protein consumed will first be converted into fat and then stored. For myth number 4, let's talk about the marketing industry. Have you heard the 10,000 steps rule? Well, that's just a marketing ploy. If you ever wondered where this number came from, here it is. In 1965, a Japanese company produced a step counter and named it Manpo Kai, which translates to 10,000 steps meter. That's it. It's a marketing ploy. In reality, this definitely isn't bad advice, as your daily activity to lose weight is a powerful tool and everyone should pay attention. However, the good news is the goal number is likely lower, anywhere from 4,400 to 7,500 steps. At that same time, more is definitely better, so while 10,000 steps is simply a marketing tool, it's actually a benefit to you. This is the only good myth on the list. Another marketing tool that's going to take your money is supplements. The number 5 myth is anything that promotes a pill as a secret to weight loss. Your quote secret to weight loss is not in a pill. While there may be some out there that slightly increase metabolism or promote fat burn, in the grand scheme of things, this will make a small dent in your overall weight loss journey. We're not saying to not utilize these, but be sure to keep them in their proper role. Speaking of burning fat, the number 6 weight loss fact is that burning fat equals losing fat. This confusion also has sometimes been used in marketing. For example, they might say a supplement increases your fat burn, suggesting this means you're going to lose fat. However, while caffeine is burning fat, it also leaves more carbs to burn later. Your body is always burning fat for energy along with using carbs. However, even when it's burning fat, you might still be gaining weight. Losing fat occurs when you burn fat but also get into a caloric deficit, so that it's not refilled. For number 7, we'll address a long-standing tip. This one has been around forever and is still shared regularly. We're talking about don't eat food after 6 p.m. This tip tries to suggest that eating foods late at night results in greater fat gain, usually explained by your metabolism being slower. In reality, the timing of your eating doesn't really matter so much, assuming your calories are the same. In other words, eating 3,000 calories in the morning will have the same effect as eating 3,000 calories in the evening. However, there is some nuance to this. For number 8, it's also a myth to say it doesn't matter when you eat. Hardly anything in the world of fitness and nutrition occurs in absolutes. We just went over your total calories is what matters in terms of gaining weight. However, this doesn't always mean timing doesn't make a difference. In reality, don't eat after 6 has been a useful tool for some people in losing weight. However, it's not because of your metabolism, so it still comes down to total calories. However, the worst of our diets occur in the late hours, pizza, shakes, etc. No one raids the kitchen at 10 p.m. for grilled salmon. Therefore, stopping at 6 p.m. does eliminate a lot of the excessive calories. Next, let's knock out some more bad advice. Myth number 9 usually sounds like HIIT is better than steady state for losing fat or something of that nature. To clarify, HIIT refers to high-intensity interval training, which includes performing intervals of maximal intensity interspersed with intervals of recovery. Steady state refers to performing cardio at a consistent, moderate speed for a prolonged period of time, basically a treadmill workout. HIIT came onto the scene a few years ago and was hailed as being so much better for fat loss. In reality, both steady state and HIIT are good tools to use for weight loss, and they work equally as well, with time efficiency being the only real variable favoring HIIT. We're now in the double digits, so we'll give you another big one. The number 10 myth is that walking is the best way to lose weight. To be clear, we think cardio is great and everyone should include it in their training. We just went over the 10,000 step belief. However, if you can only pick one of the methods of training, we believe that lifting weights is a better tool. Lifting weights is still going to burn calories, but it'll also help maintain muscle and strength during your fat loss journey. If all you do is walk or some other form of cardio, you don't get this benefit. Now, obviously, the best option is to do walking with your weight training. For that reason, we want to talk about myth 11, which is more of a misunderstanding, and that's people severely underestimate the impact of walking. Many people falsely believe that your training must be intense to be effective for weight loss, and that's a problem. Going on a daily 30 to 60-minute walk can make a huge impact on your overall weight loss journey. The important takeaway is not to underestimate the impact that simply moving will play in your weight loss journey. Now let's talk about another misunderstanding. Number 12 is another myth, plain and simple. It states that your metabolism drops after the age of 30. While that claim has some truth to it, but it is terribly misleading. This claim is usually made with the implication that it's simply biological and there's nothing we can do about it. In reality, while a person's metabolism does tend to drop after 30, it's not biology, rather it's caused by our behavior. After 30, we tend to stop being as active as our younger years and our diet usually declines. This combination of poor food choices and living a sedentary lifestyle is what leads to the drop. If people stay active and eat healthy their whole life, our metabolism is steady until about the age of 60. Therefore, don't accept this fate. Staying active is the best thing you can do for your longevity and increasing the quality of your life. Going back to another straight-up lie, myth 13 are body type fat loss programs. Technically known as somatotypes, body type fat loss programs claim to be the ideal program for your body type. Ectomorphs who are tall and slim, mesomorphs who are athletic, and endomorphs who are shorter and fatter. Interestingly, these body types were created to identify the possibility of physical characteristics being linked to personality traits. For example, endomorphs are supposed to be friendly and outgoing. So none of this is true, and none of it has any link to weight loss. As we're talking about practices with little connection to science, let's talk about your BMI for number 14. Now, BMI isn't as outlandish as somatotypes, as there is some legitimate use to it, just not how it's used today. You see, BMI was created in the 1830s by Adolphe Quetelet, a Belgian mathematician and sociologist. It was created as a quick assessment tool to track trends in populations, not individuals. Adolphe needed an easy way to assess the fitness level of an entire town's population. However, he even specifically stated it was not a good assessment to make a definitive decision on the health of an individual person. This is because there are a ton of variables that aren't accounted for, such as water weight, percentage of muscle or fat, bone size, and others. Again, it was a tool to measure people in an entire town. Yet another common teaching that can lead people astray is number 15. We're talking about the idea that nutrition is 80% while your training is 20%. While we understand the general idea of the saying, it's not really true. This is trying to emphasize the importance of nutrition for your health, which is definitely not a bad thing. However, it pits nutrition and training against each other, when in reality they complement each other and work best when they're both optimized. Both your nutrition and training should be 100%. If either of them are off, your results will suffer. For number 16, let's talk about muscle for a little bit. Specifically, how many or how few calories a pound of muscle burns. You've probably heard of the importance of building muscle while you lose weight, as muscle will burn more calories. While there are a lot of awesome reasons you should lift weights while losing fat, burning calories isn't one. It is true that muscle will burn more calories, however, it's not a ton, as this claim seems to imply. 1 pound of muscle burns an extra 5 to 6 calories per day. If you figure you might put on 20 to 25 pounds in your first year, you can expect to burn an extra 100 calories after 365 days of training. Of course, 100 calories is 100 calories, however, you have plenty of other stuff to get excited about with lifting. Speaking of exaggerations, number 17 is going to give the real deal with Epoch. Epoch is one of the latest buzzwords that stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. This refers to the amount of work done by your body once you stop exercising to bring your body system back to homeostasis. Once you stop exercising, the body continues to require oxygen at an elevated rate to repair tissue, replenish energy sources, and remove metabolic byproducts generated during the exercise, such as lactic acid. So Epoch is real, but it's been marketed as if it's the most important part of the workout. It's not. Studies show that the total calories you burn with Epoch is equal to about 6 to 15% of the total calories burned during exercise. So yes, it does exist, but still to a very small effect, making it hardly worth it to choose workouts solely upon it. Another exaggeration? Number 18 deals with fast weight loss. Really anything with fast weight loss. Seems as though every ad for weight loss has to do with instant weight loss, 30 pounds in 30 days. We can't comment on all of these, but the results are far from normal, assuming they're even true. However, if they are real, they're still occurring way too fast. If you were to go to any traditional nutritionist, they'd recommend you get an extra 300 to 500 caloric deficit daily. However, 1 pound of fat requires approximately 3,500 calories to burn. This means that it would take you a minimum of 1 week to burn 1 pound of fat, or 4 pounds a month. Even this number might be too high in the long term, meaning that losing fat even slower might be ideal. This slow rate of fat loss will help mitigate the possibility of muscle loss, as the body will not be in such of a need for energy. For the next myth, we want to tackle another misconception. The number 19 myth is the relationship between sweating and fat loss. These two are often attached to each other as if there's a direct relationship. That means that people believe that sweating a lot means they're burning calories. That isn't necessarily the case. Sweating occurs as a mechanism to help keep you cool when your core temperature rises. On the other hand, calories burned relates to the amount of work one does. While more work can increase your body's temperature, that's just one mechanism that controls temperature and does not control your sweat. For example, a person can lose more calories running a marathon during the winter in Canada, yet sweat more walking around Miami Beach in the summer. Further, people have different sweat rates and thresholds, meaning two people will have very different amounts of sweat in the same scenario. This simply means stop assessing how good a session was based on how much you sweat. We made it to number 20, so we're going to address another big, false belief. Working out while fasted is better for fat loss. This is connected to number 6. Burning fat is not the same as losing fat. When you train fasted, you'll break down more fat during that session for fuel. However, you will only lose fat if you stay in a caloric deficit. Let's say you burned 300 calories while fasting and it all came from fat. That's great. But once you eat your next meal, you're going to have an extra 300 calories that won't be burned as your exercise is already done. So if you eat 300 calories before training, you'll burn those calories. If you train first, you'll burn 300 calories from fat, but then you'll hold on to 300 calories the next time you eat. Again, it all evens out in the long run. Calorie control is always and will always be the primary mechanism of weight loss. Another important lesson you need to know is that weight loss is not constant. Number 21 is the myth that losing fat is linear. Too many people believe that once they start dieting and training, their weight loss is going to be a linear process. In other words, they believe their weight loss will be a constant process with no bumps. In reality, weight loss will look like the stock market. You'll have times of weight loss, times of extreme weight loss, plateaus, and even gains. What's important is the total sum in the long term. As long as the trend is a drop in fat, you are succeeding. This is important to know so that you don't get disappointed. Yet another misconception that can be demotivating is the weight scale. Number 22 is more of a statement and says to stop weighing yourself every day. As weight loss isn't consistent, weighing yourself every day can be discouraging if you're on a gain. There are so many factors to weight loss that your weight will fluctuate daily. You will gain weight and lose weight even if you do everything correctly. In addition, there are other things to judge other than your weight to see progress. Besides, we promise it doesn't matter how often you look at the scale, it will not help you lose weight faster. In fact, number 23 will deal with another issue with scales. Stop using the scale as your only variable for measurement. The only thing the weight scale tells you is how much you weigh at that exact moment. This includes fat, muscle, and bone. It also measures things that vary all the time, such as the amount of food in your stomach, water, urine, and a whole host of other variables. Women deal with bloating every month. So while the scale is useful, you should judge your fat loss journey with your scale number compared against other variables. We actually have 4: how you look in the mirror, how your clothes are fitting, how your performance is, and your general state of energy. For example, if the scale is up but your clothes are loose, you like what you see in the mirror, your training is improving, and you feel great, then don't change anything. When you use all those variables, you'll get a much better idea of your fat loss and your health. However, in order to see these improvements in the mirror, you need to follow a diet, yeah? What one? Myth 24 is that there's a best diet out there. Every diet or hack tends to claim to be the best way to lose weight. To back these claims up, they have amazing feedback from actual followers. Here's the thing, the feedback might be true, all of it. In other words, every diet has people that have done amazing on it. You see, every diet will work for some people. However, there's no perfect diet. What these diet advertisements don't tell you about is all the people who have failed. That's because not everyone does well on every diet. So there's no perfect diet, but there might be a perfect diet for you. In fact, maybe you don't even need a diet. Maybe you just need to cut out certain foods. You see, there's two things that dictate a diet's success. The first is that it puts you in a caloric deficit. For Myth 25, we're going to tell you the second one. The most important variable of a diet that will dictate your success isn't what foods it cuts out or what time frame you eat, but adherence. Every diet claims to use different mechanisms to promote fat loss. Perhaps it's increasing fat metabolism for fuel, maybe it gives you flexibility in what foods you can eat so you don't lose interest. In reality, any of these could work for you. It's your job to find out what makes the most sense to you. What type of diet or style of eating fits your needs and lifestyle? You'll know if it works if you're able to adhere for a long period. Ideally, you'll find a way of eating that doesn't feel like a diet. This is what'll cause meaningful weight loss, long-term adherence. Speaking of diets, there is one tactic that we have a problem with. Myth 26 is the use of cheat days. Using cheat days is a sure way to sabotage your progress and might even completely derail your diet. Remember, you should only be in a 500-calorie deficit daily, meaning in 6 days, you'll have a total of a 3,000-calorie deficit. If you give yourself the freedom to eat what you want for an entire day, you can easily get rid of your entire deficit. For example, people are often seen eating an entire Domino's pizza, which could have 1,800 to 2,500 calories. At the very least, it'll slow down your weight loss significantly. Still, we believe this style of eating makes you associate your normal diet foods as being boring. Imagine believing you're being punished all week and your only bit of happiness comes from looking forward to the weekend so you can eat the greasiest bacon cheeseburger and pizza. Instead, you should have put more effort into finding healthy recipes for delicious foods so you don't feel like you need to have a cheat day. Up until now, we've been dealing a lot with myths that have a bit of nuance in them. For Myth 27, let's get back to a myth that's just 100% wrong: training by body types. We're not sure when the body type training started or why, but it needs to go. Body types is simply referring to what are known as somatotypes. Somatotypes were identified in the 1940s by a sociologist named William H. Sheldon. What does a sociologist have to do with weight loss? Well, nothing. He was originally testing a theory that said physical characteristics were attached to personality. For example, he theorized that endomorphs, short and heavier weight, tended to be more jovial and sweet. On the other hand, ectomorphs, tall and skinny individuals, are intelligent, shy, and creative, while mesomorphs, individuals with athletic builds, are confident and aggressive. And if you're thinking that has nothing to do with weight loss, you are correct. Everyone loses the same and everyone gains weight the same. Don't fall for these special programs. The only thing special about them is their high price. Myth 28 is another downright lie. Carbs make you fat. While we're at it, let's include Myth 29. Fat will make you fat. If you're old enough to remember growing up in the 80s and early 90s, you remember that fat was demonized and was the sole reason for weight gain in the USA. However, a shift started around the 2000s and was in full swing by 2010. Now, carbs were the enemy. Doesn't take a genius to realize these both can't be right. So which one is right? Neither. Both are wrong. No single nutrient is the sole reason you're gaining weight. You gain weight due to eating excessive calories. In reality, this is due to the sheer amount of added sugar in our diet and processed foods. These foods are simply extra high in calories and palatability, yet have low or no nutritional value. Unhealthy food is what makes us fat. This is why you should focus on whole foods that are full of quality carbs and fat, and you're good to go. We've made it to number 30. Diet soda is good for you. Again, this belief comes from people judging food solely based on the amount of calories in it. As diet soda has no calories, it must be good, right? Nope. Soda has artificial sweeteners that can cause similar responses in insulin and is still associated with metabolic syndrome and obesity. How does it increase obesity? Apart from confusing your insulin release, studies show it can trigger dopamine and actually increase appetite. To be fair, there are also studies that show it might help with weight loss. However, this is hardly true for 100% of people, so it's not a magic bullet. Besides, there are far too many other issues to make it your primary source of hydration if you're losing weight. Just stick to water. But that's not the only diet food to be aware of. Myth 31 is that reduced-calorie foods are good for you. In reality, almost any fat-free or reduced-fat food has issues. Again, these claims are feeding off fear of fat. As we mentioned in Myth 29, some fats are actually good for you. Unfortunately, these good natural fats are what's usually taken out of food. At that same time, these fats are usually just replaced with carbs, generally simple sugars as a means to add taste. They're just swapping around calories. Again, stick to whole foods and this won't be an issue. Speaking of whole foods, your diet shouldn't restrict any of them. Myth 32 is that keto, carnivore, or any other restrictive diet is good for weight loss. There's a ton of nuance in this one, but the main issue is demonizing an entire food group as a whole. Again, in modern times, it's generally carbs. However, even veganism, which marks off all animal products, is not going to be your key to weight loss. Well, it might be, if it fits your lifestyle, but it's not a miracle diet for every person. If it works for you, then great, but if you can't adhere to it, it's worthless. So again, this doesn't mean these can't work, we're just saying there's nothing inherently magical about them. Speaking of veganism, Myth 33 is a trick they use when comparing a traditional diet against veganism. When a vegan diet is promoted, they often compare it to a traditional diet to prove its superiority. When the traditional diet is shown, it's usually a mixture of soda, pizza, hamburgers, and of course, veganism is better than that. However, a nutritionist writing a meal plan for an omnivore isn't going to use those foods because no one thinks they're healthy. A healthy omnivore diet would be full of fish, lean meats, complex carbs, nuts, legumes, fruit, vegetables, etc. Plus, a whole lot of what's on pizza and burgers are vegan anyway. This one just rubs us the wrong way as it's dishonest. If you want to try a vegan diet, then that's great. Just don't fall for misleading comparisons. Another common belief seen in the world of weight loss is that you can target your weight loss in a specific area. Myth 34 is that you can perform spot reduction. Now, this one does have a bit of nuance. Recently, some studies have shown this might actually be possible through both medical interventions and your training. However, research is far from conclusive, and there are too many unknowns to allow someone to prescribe a solid training program. Further, the entire idea is to set someone up for failure. What if they try and they don't lose weight in that spot that's desired? They'll probably get discouraged. Any excess fat will hurt your physique and your health, so just concentrate on the total body fat, or else you might get involved with suboptimal training. Let's address another myth with training. Myth 35 is that you can train away a bad diet. Now, of course, training is going to help you burn calories. However, this means nothing if you don't have your diet under control. Think about this. Who has ever gained weight because they didn't train enough? No one. Everyone throughout history has always gained weight because they ate too much. Sure, being involved in regular training will increase the amount of calories you eat. However, you can definitely eat more if your diet is left unchecked. Stop putting so much emphasis on your fat-burning workouts and pay more attention to your daily nutrition. Then you'll start seeing real results. Let's tackle another myth that deals with high expectations. Myth 36 is that weight loss happens immediately. Of course, sometimes it does, but other times it doesn't. Some people may not have measurable results for 2 weeks. This can be due to a plethora of reasons. Perhaps you're not fit enough and your training isn't as intense as it could be. Maybe you're eating hidden calories somewhere and underestimating the amount you're consuming. It could be anything. The point is, don't expect to see significant results right away. Give yourself at least a month before reaching any assessments, and that's the bare minimum. Myth 37 is a good one as we're actually busting a busted myth, that is that you can lose weight while drinking alcohol. Generally, the claim is as long as you watch your calories, having a spirit or a low-calorie beer is okay. While this may technically be right, it's not reality. By reality, we mean that people can easily get carried away when drinking. In fact, that's the joke. A crazy night always starts with, "I'll just have a couple." At the same time, alcohol actually triggers your AGRP neurons, which are your starvation neurons. In other words, they trigger stronger hunger. This is why you might get cravings even having just a couple of drinks, even if you just ate. It's not good when you're trying to lose weight. Also, we do know for sure it's definitely not going to help you lose weight. That means the best option is to stay away. Plus, alcohol is going to waste money, and since eating healthy is so expensive, you need to save your money. Or is it? Myth 38 is that eating healthy is expensive. Maybe this was true a couple decades ago, but not anymore. Perhaps you won't be able to eat sirloin and salmon every meal, but lean beef, chicken, and pork can be bought for less than $6 a pound. Apples are about $2 a pound, while bananas are just 75 cents a pound. Figure that one Snickers is $1.39, and a meal deal at McDonald's can easily cost $6. Now, of course, we understand there are some instances where buying the healthier version of a product may be more expensive, such as no added sugar varieties, but this definitely isn't true across the board. And yes, organic will be more expensive than non-organic, but non-organic beef is better than McDonald's. And one of our favorite snacks is banana or apple and peanut butter. There's actually a website that details cheap recipes. Therefore, don't buy into this, pun intended, and throw away your entire diet. The good thing is at least you're eating. Myth 39 is that fasting is an effective way to lose weight. Again, this one is full of nuance. Fasting can be an effective method for some people to lose weight. However, the primary working mechanism comes down to you not eating as many calories. In other words, there's nothing about fasting that speeds up fat loss or makes you lose more fat, assuming you're eating the same amount of calories. In terms of weight loss, it helps some people control their total caloric intake. At the same time, some people will wait until they eat and then chow down on thousands of calories thinking it's okay they fasted. For fasting to work, you still must fix your diet. For the big 4-0, we're going to fix a huge fault. Now, this isn't a myth per se, rather it's a damaging behavior that many exhibit while losing weight. We're talking about the need to obsess over every little detail of your workout and nutrition. Of course, it's great to be aware. In fact, you need to be aware. However, many people new to their weight loss journey can begin to obsess and overanalyze everything they do. For example, worrying what exercise burns more calories, or trying to hit their calories perfectly. Oh no, yesterday I burned 400 calories in class, but today I only burned 370. These 30 calories are all that's required to get some people discouraged. Remember that weight loss is the sum total of months and months of work. Stressing over every detail every day is a surefire way to fail. Be aware throughout the day, but understand your journey will not be perfect. Like we said earlier in the video, it's not linear, and obsessing over everything won't make it so. One of the things people obsess about is definitely going to be food. Therefore, they will often choose nutrition bars or granola bars for a healthy alternative to other snacks. Myth 41 is believing a food is healthy just because the package says so. While some nutrition bars are actually nutritious, most of your mainstream bars have similar ingredients and nutritional value to typical candy bars. The thing is, as long as we can convince ourselves something is healthy, it's good to go in our mind. For example, we sometimes will jokingly eat a Snickers and say it's a healthier choice because it has peanuts. The point is, there are a ton of examples of a food that's marketed as healthy, but after you take a closer look, you'll see it's not so. To determine if a food is healthy, you must check the actual ingredient list as well as the nutritional values. Speaking of checking the nutritional value instead of listening to packaging, Myth 42 will deal with one of the most common lies: high-protein food. How is that a myth? Well, foods advertised as high-protein are rarely actually high-protein. The term high-protein is thrown around everywhere. We've even seen peanut butter claimed to be high-protein. Now, we love peanut butter. However, unless it's a special brand that adds protein, it is not high protein. Unfortunately, there's no clear definition for what a high-protein food is or what percent of calories should come from protein. However, a good guess would be a minimum of 20 grams of protein for every 200 calories, or at least every serving has 20 grams. That puts it at 40% protein, which is still relatively low compared to chicken breast, which is 80% protein. 40% foods include such things as salmon or sirloin steak. To be clear, food doesn't have to be high protein to be healthy, and its protein content doesn't define its value. They're just labeling high protein as a sales tactic. Speaking of quote high-protein foods that aren't necessarily high protein, yet you should still be eating, eggs. Myth number 43 is people telling you to stay away from eggs. Where this myth stems from is specifically the yolk of the egg, as it's full of cholesterol. There's been a long-standing myth that cholesterol is bad for you and you should limit it as much as possible. This is a heavily nuanced subject, but it's basically summed up as some cholesterol is actually really good for you. Regardless, we now know the myth of eating a few eggs a week is way exaggerated. In fact, we already talked about how adding eggs to your breakfast can improve weight loss. In addition, opting out of eating yolk for only the whites can actually cause a decrease in your testosterone levels. Why? Because testosterone is cholesterol-based. Now let's hit another exercise-related myth. Myth 44 is that you should be exhausted after every workout. Thanks to the whole no pain, no gain mindset, we've all been led to believe that every workout needs to be brutal and you should be rolling around in a puddle of sweat every time you train. While this is fine once in a while, it doesn't need to be done every time. In fact, you shouldn't train this way every time. Your body is not equipped for such high intensity all the time. If you do, it could lead to either fatigue or injury. Caloric-wise, it's also not needed. For one, if you're overweight, you likely don't have the stamina to maintain high intensity for too long. So while you might get tired and be sweating profusely, the total amount of work is going to be pretty low. However, if you take the intensity down, you can train significantly longer, which will lead to a greater caloric burn. In fact, one of the best things you can do is put a treadmill on an incline and walk briskly for an hour. Another thing you don't need to burn fat? Myth 45 is that any crazy contraption will help you lose weight. After being on Earth for a few decades, we've seen a lot of products sold to melt fat. Fat belts, fat massagers, and heating creams, just to name a few. None of these work to any meaningful degree. There are a few products out there that may have some science to back them up, but they're few and far between. Again, these are designed to prey on people's desire of having an easy fix to weight loss. Don't buy into them, literally. Our next myth is also similar to myth 45. Myth 46 is the use of sweatsuits for fat loss. We already talked about how sweating doesn't equate to fat loss, but we want to double down on sweatsuits, mainly because they're dangerous. Sweatsuits are clothing that are specifically made to induce sweating. A free version is simply using trash bags. Now, these do hold a purpose which is beyond the scope of this video, however, it is not to lose meaningful weight. If you use one, you'll likely lose a significant amount of weight in a short amount of time. However, this is merely water weight, as you literally sweated it all out. As we talked before, sweating has very little to do with caloric burn. You will gain all this weight back the instant you finish and hydrate. So how do we lose weight? Myth 47 would say you need to go on a diet. You don't. We need to clarify what we mean. When we say go on a diet, we're talking about Atkins or Keto or Paleo, something of that nature. In reality, you just need to clean up what you're eating. The majority of people can simply follow 2 rules and see awesome results. Cut out foods with added sugar and limit processed foods. That's it. Those 2 rules are sufficient for the majority of people. This basically means you need to concentrate on eating whole foods, and these are foods that should remain similar to how they're found in the wild. Often people are so used to eating processed foods that are very high in calories compared to whole foods. Once they start eating whole foods, they can find they eat a much larger quantity and fill up fast, which ultimately results in weight loss. Myth 48 is that if it runs in the family, there's nothing you can do about it. While genetics can play a role in determining someone's predisposition to certain body types and metabolic rates, it's crucial to recognize that lifestyle factors, including diet and exercise, significantly impact weight. The next one is a big one, and it's more of a lie we tell ourselves. Myth 49 is that you're only eating 1,200 calories but still gaining weight. This is probably the most common claim that trainers hear from a client whose weight loss isn't going as planned. The client keeps gaining weight even though they're only eating 1,200 calories. A trainer wants to listen and seem like they understand. In reality, they want to tell you, stop lying. It's harsh, but it's true. There are a few instances where someone's body won't respond to basic physiology, but again, these are the very small exceptions to the rule. However, people may not know they're lying, which we guess doesn't actually make it a lie, but you get the point. Rather, they severely underestimate how much they eat. Emphasis on severely. A study from back in 1992 found that obese patients on average underreport calories by 47% and overestimate activity by 51%. What this means is that if you think you're eating 1,200 calories, you're probably eating around 1,800. If you think you're burning 500 calories, you're probably only burning around 330. Further, many reported that they think they had medical issues such as thyroid issues, and even some took medication. Other studies have been done as well with similar results. We're not saying this to be harsh. Rather, we want you to succeed. The first part of being successful is being totally honest with where you stand. If you think you're eating 1,200 calories but are really eating 2,000, you need to know and learn how to calculate. Myth number 50. Weight loss is hard. You're probably thinking, of course it's hard. How do you explain everyone trying? Understood. But losing weight really isn't hard. We should explain the mechanics of dieting are actually very simple. You need to start eating healthier and start moving more. Yes, there's some nuance in there, but for the majority of people, that's what needs to happen. What's hard is falling to temptation, not sticking to your plan, and breaking bad habits. So these are the 50 biggest myths and misunderstandings found in the diet industry. How many did you believe? Hopefully not too many, but if you did, we hope you now know the truth. But we do hope you learned something and that none of these busted myths were a buzzkill. The true secret about weight loss is old-school dedication and persistence. While it's not as exciting, we can tell you that achieving it is almost a sure thing if you do.